In case you guys don't know my name is Eric. My company is New Vista Community Services. We are a 501c3. We are a nonprofit, and our goal is to go out and educate and help seniors, right, with technology. Our disclaimer, of course, is that these classes are provided as a public service for informational purposes only. All information from this class or from a New Vista is presented without representation, guarantee, or warranty whatsoever regarding the accuracy, relevance, or completeness of the information. Just so you know, right, things change all the time. We try to keep up. One morning I was giving a Google Maps class, and that morning Google updated their app. So all the things that I was about to talk about had changed, okay? So we try to keep up to date. The information contained in this class from a New Vista is provided only as general information, which may be incomplete. I already said that stuff, right? Users of the information are responsible for independently verifying any and all information and are responsible for use of any products included in the class. Inclusion of links from this class does not imply endorsement or support. We don't get paid by anybody, like from a company, just so you guys know. This class is being recorded and may be used for training, marketing, or commercial purposes. If you do not wish to have your likeness recorded for the people on Zoom, please turn off your camera by clicking on the camera icon in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom window, or simply cover your camera. All right. So I read through that really quickly because it's
Eric, there's a funny language on the transcript that I don't understand.
Sorry. So I was giving just so you guys know, I was giving a demonstration, and so there's closed captions.
Got it.
And I will change it. I was giving a demonstration, and the closed captions were in Tongan, just so you know. So
thank you. Thank
you.
So
now you know what Tongan looks like, right, in the written form. So let me change this real quick. Thank you for letting me know.
It was worse than Greek, but I'm glad others enjoyed it.
I'm gonna hide this panel so you guys can see this. All right. Did you guys see? You guys notice you didn't see the closed captions because it was covered, right?
How did you close that panel?
There's on the three dots, the Zoom panel. On the there's three dots, and it says hide meeting controls. All right. So now we can see our closed captions.
I don't typically set it on. So do you have it set up as the default? I know it's something I can manage, but I always see the transcripts, but
the closed captions, you mean?
I'm in the closed captions, yeah.
Yeah, it's something you set up in PowerPoint.
Yeah, I know. Okay, got
it. And it only applies in slideshow. Okay. See if we can get going here. All right, so let me ask a question for everybody. You all have passwords, right? You guys are obviously all online here, okay? Otherwise you wouldn't be in this class. How many of you guys reuse your passwords? Yeah. We strongly suggest that you do not, and I'll tell you the reason why. So we had an earlier discussion about emails, knowing if they're fake or false. And it's not only just you, but your friends. The emails get stolen for a reason. They can scrape all the information that's inside of your emails. Oftentimes our accounts, most of the time, our accounts use our email address as the username. And if they just get one password that they figure out, right, then they can apply it to a whole bunch of other ones. Now, the problem is, great, I have to create new passwords, unique passwords for every important company. How do I do that, and how do I remember them? Right. So this is what we're going to talk about today for a little bit, and then we'll talk about the other pieces of it. So to us, one of the most important things is really 2 or 3 really important steps that you have to remember in creating passwords. The first one is to tier your accounts. Okay. Not all passwords are or accounts are created equally. To me, and I'm sure to you, some of the most important websites that we might do is things regarding our financials, right? I said earlier before we started getting on this call or this meeting, I said, I worked really hard for my money, and I've worked really hard, and you guys have worked really hard to get to where you're at. Those accounts are probably the most important ones, okay? And there's probably only 2 or 3 of them. You might have a bank or two, account or two. You might have an investment account or two, right? Those are the ones we want to make longer and stronger. Okay. Now we don't want to make it #1 ampersand capital T Y R 2 5 whatever, right? Because those are really hard to remember. What we like to do, and we're going to talk about, is use common words in what we call passphrases. Okay. So those are the tier 1s. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We have our tier 2s. They might have some financial information like a credit card. Your email should be in maybe a tier 2 or tier 1. They should still be long, but maybe not as complicated or not as long. And then there's the tier 3 stuff. Okay, and the tier 3 stuff is like Safeway rewards. I don't care if somebody sees what I'm shopping for or what coupons I get. There's a lot of things that have accounts that don't have a lot of information about you in it, but it gets you other perks. So we don't really care about that. If you're going to reuse a password, which we still tell you not to, but we'll show you how we would remember them. If you were going to reuse any passwords, I'd use it for that stuff. Okay. So let's talk about this. So we tiered them first, right? Most important, pretty important, not important. Now we're going to create a pattern. Okay. And what that means is something like I might have a theme for my financials. Maybe it's my favorite movie, and then all my passwords are, Han Solo is Harrison Ford, right? Luke Skywalker is, what's his name? I can't remember his name is, whatever. Darth Vader is a really bad guy, right? So you can create themes, but the most important part is how you write them down, how you create them. So something like might be like, the first letter is capitalized of every word. I might use a connector, the same connector between every word. I might use the year that I created that account or the month and year that I created that account, because then I know, hey, when I changed it most recently. So what does that look like? So that pattern looks like something like this, right? I love candy with an exclamation point. Between the first letter of that one is the first letter of each word is capitalized. I use the same connector between each one, and I might end it with an exclamation point, or I might end it with a year. The second one, the last letter of every word is capitalized. My dog has fleas. Same connector in between. This third one is a little more, the second letter is capitalized. Birds can fly at 1990, right? Or something like, I don't like passwords, right? And so while we create a pattern, even if I write down a hint, like I don't really write down my passwords, I write down a hint. So a hint might be my dad's favorite song. Well, I know how I'm going to write it. I know what the song is. Sweet Caroline, right? Neil Diamond. And I'll put like the first letter capitalized. I might have a plus sign as my break in between. And then I might put the year that song was made. And then I just have a password. And the longer the password, the better. The more words the password, the better, right? And it's easier to remember because they're common words. It's not exclamation point, 0, 1, capital M, lowercase l, ampersand, whatever, right? These are just easy to remember. And you only have to remember 2 or 3 or 4 of them because of your financials or your tier 1. Does that make sense to everybody here in the class? Okay. So tier your accounts, most important, second most important, and the ones we don't care about. Second part, create a pattern. Make sure we write all the passwords the same way so we know what they are. And this for the tier 3 ones, you might have a passphrase. So this passphrase, you can't really see it, but it's dog, umbrella, and ping pong, right? I made the picture, just so you guys know, I made that picture using AI, right? And I put the company name in the front of it, right? Or I might put it in the back of it, or I might put it in between, but it's the same passphrase, and you get a unique password every time. Okay. The next question is, all right, so I got this. How do I make them up? We talked about themes, we talked about patterns, we talked about tiering. So let's figure out some different ideas to make these passwords, okay? And so a good example here, let's see what it is. When I go to people's homes and we change passwords or we do whatever, I look around their room or wherever their computer is. And almost always there's a picture that's important to them. They have books around. They have they have statues or some kind of other thing. Look around your office because it's a visual cue. Find a favorite picture. Maybe you say who was in it. Maybe you say where the picture was taken, when it was taken, or maybe it's a color or some pictures. One person's house, they had some art and they knew who the title of the art was, and they just used that as their password. All right. So we look for visual cues as well as writing notes down. That's what that kind of picture is saying, right? 7 alligators in a bathtub, dog ping pong, umbrella, things like that. If you really want to get super complicated, but easy to remember, you could take a book. So if you have several books, you might have a favorite book in there. And here's the thing, we talk about how we keep track of our passwords. I have zero problem with anybody writing down the passwords. I suggest that you code them, and I suggest that you don't put them in an obvious place. I don't want to have my password list on the staple to the or taped to the refrigerator with a note that says passwords. Right? That's an obvious place, right? But here's you can create your own cipher, for example. So when you write down so if I say, hey, Bank of America, I might just write my favorite book, page 87. I go to my favorite book because thieves don't know what your favorite book is. You go to page 87, you take the first 3 words of the second paragraph, again, a pattern. You apply the pattern to those first 3 words. You have a super secret cipher for passwords. Just don't lose your favorite book. All right, I got a question, I think, from Nancy here. Nancy, you got a question?
Yeah, just as we know, the different sites have different requirements for your password. It drives me crazy.
Yes.
I wish it were just, I mean, capital, upper, lowercase, having some numbers, but they're all over the place on what special characters are allowed or not. And
Yeah, so
Right.
generally speaking, and I think I had that question here. Did you guys hear her question? It was about different sites have different requirements for passwords. Okay. Generally speaking, every site will accept a capital letter and a lowercase letter, and some will
Right.
even read it. Generally speaking, every site will allow for a number or mandate number. Like you said, the question is on the special characters. Almost all of them will allow things like a hyphen, a plus sign, an @ sign, an ampersand, a star. Okay. So if you kind of stick around with those,
Okay.
99% of your passwords will work if you create a pattern like that.
I used to use parentheses, which help, but that doesn't always fly. So
Not every site. So the ones I've come across are not everyone likes a parentheses. Not every website likes a parentheses. Not every website likes an underscore.
got it.
Okay.
Thanks. So the plus sign is pretty, okay, got it.
But yeah, plus signs are usually plus sign hyphens are usually pretty good. Yes, question.
Underscore, not all.
Not all sites like an underscore. You're correct.
Oh, because PCs use that.
Yeah, we use it. Yeah, so the question was, she was asking about the underscore. Yes, PCs use it for naming conventions for file names. So they don't, a lot of websites don't like that. Okay. So again, we're just giving you ideas of how to go ahead and manage them. Passwords are super important, right? They're our first line of defense to prevent access. I didn't go through all the other slides about how passwords just a math problem. It's basically characters and iterations, right? Number of characters and how many iterations are. And so you might think of something like 3 billion iterations is a lot, but it takes a computer about a second to go through them all. Okay, and so more words, more iterations, more characters, more iterations, common words, easier to remember. I'll give you an example of how this looks real quick. So let me just go, oops, let me go back. See if I can click on this or not. Go here. Let's just go. All right, so security.org is a nonprofit that focuses on security, but I'm gonna just do Samuel 2023, okay, capital SAMUEL 2023, okay, capital Samuel 10 characters, right? Basically 7 months for a computer to just kind of go through it. But if I do something like I plus love plus ice plus cream plus 2023. Okay, so I just said, hey, I love ice cream 2023. I know what my connector is. I know I'm capitalizing the first letter of every word, and it takes, I don't even know how many zeros this is, but 6 trillion is a lot, right? And so just by adding something like that, I love ice cream, makes a strong password. Okay. All right, questions before I go into password managers.
You're going not to use real words, but that is more identifiable. And you think something like AI, you give it.
So
Give it the first and last letter, we can read things that have all the internal letters doubled up.
yeah. So the question is, they used to tell us not to use common words. Well, they're wrong. They were wrong. If you look at NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards, there's a whole story behind this all, right? There's a guy named Bill Burr who created that first password methodology. He's now 75 years old. He says he wishes he never said it. And he didn't even say it. He just kind of blurted it out. And then everybody said, oh, that's gospel, right? That's how we got to do it. But then the more that we get along with it and the more that we advance with computers and iterations and math problems, they realize longer is better, passphrases are better.
It's treating each digit independently.
Yes, yes, yes. So she says it treats each digit. It's a statistics problem, right? That's all it is. And so, but I do want to continue to comment on that. So we do tell you not to use things that we publicly know about you. So I could look up your name. I could probably figure out and go to ancestry.com, figure out who your children are, who your grandchildren are, what years they were born, right? I could probably find where you lived in the past. And then we might know through some other search if you have pets and the pets' names.
Because I tested where I was born,
Mm-hmm.
and it took centuries.
So she said she tested where she was born. It took a long time. The question is, can I guess that?
Oh, can you guess?
Can I guess it? Because I can look it up about you. Maybe. But we just tell you to stay away from things that are publicly known.
Oh, so birth year.
Birth year, I try not to use. Right. I will use a fake birth year and be consistent with my fake birth year. If you look at all my account and profiles, I'm about 30 years younger than I am.
Well, I was confused where I was born, exclamation point. The other 3 digits. And that's what gave me this.
A long.
Unbelievably long time.
So where do you bank? I'm kidding. She just gave me her password. No. Yes, but individualize them and make them different, right?
It's a region. And on my birth certificate.
Don't tell us too much. Don't tell us. This is publicly recorded. Okay. Don't tell us anything. Yeah, so it's a general idea. Just go with the flow, and you might do it with your spouse or former spouse's birthplace. I just caution on using stuff that we can publicly find about you. Okay, you had a question, sir?
So we have a platform here that many people touch now.
Yes,
And I think a lot of people
yes,
touch with something like your phone number, your name.
yes,
I don't know.
yes. So this is, the question is about Touchtown. I wish Veda was on, because they use Touchtown in Eschaton as well, where we also work and we do some other stuff to them. And yes, it is, it's, I don't know enough about Touchdown. I do believe it's cloud-based. And yes, there is a lot of information in there about you, about your profile and, you know, birth year and all this other stuff, any kind of medical issues or whatever. I will have to follow up with them about that. Okay, but I will, because you're right. I've seen people log into it and it's just your apartment number. Yeah. You can always make stuff up too in your profile.
That's not very.
I know. Well, I'll talk to him about it. Okay. Did somebody else have a question online?
No, I was just gonna comment, and we don't have to discuss. I'm very familiar with Touchtown, and I've been through the issues with the security and stuff here, so. Anyway,
Yeah, it's always a trade-off between convenience and function and security. And it's just,
yeah.
I'll look into it a little bit more. Right. They also don't want you to get locked out, which, because there's, I mean, it's how many residents here, and we've got 25 of you guys here. So yeah, another question. Well, you know, that's a great segue, because he asked about 1Password, which is a password manager. All right, and so thank you for that introduction. We're going to talk about password managers. If you don't know what a password manager is, it's another program or software that stores all your passwords. And if you have things properly configured on your computer or your phone, it'll automatically fill them in, right? It remembers your username, it remembers your password. And when you go into your website and you have to go and log in, it fills it in automatically, right? Password managers are great. You can sync it across multiple devices. Each device, so your phone, your tablet, your computer, has to have that software on it. You can also use it with your biometrics on your phone or tablet or computer, which means your fingerprint or face ID. You can also share some of them, share portions of it with family and friends that you trust, not the child that you don't like anymore, right? Or is trying to get your money, but all the other ones that are responsible, you can share ones with, okay? So we did this class a while ago, probably a year or two ago, and Virginia asked me, if you think password managers are great, do you store all your passwords in? And I said, no. Because again, I am uber ultra paranoid about my money, right? And in my belief is that anything can be hacked. Because what happens is they encrypt it on your computer, they encrypt it wherever it rests, but also realize that that 4 companies are being hacked every minute of the day. Okay, stealing information. You might have heard recently 23andMe was hacked. If you've ever done a 23andMe, they now have all your information, and they're offering to sell it on the dark web. Anything, in my opinion, can be hacked. Okay, so we go back to our methodology. You have your tier 1 passwords. We want to make them longer, stronger, more complicated in terms of character spacing. I write those down and don't use a password manager for those. In fact, Virginia asked me this question, like I said, a year and a half ago. She was surprised I said no. And 2 weeks later, LastPass had been hacked. All right. And so all that stuff happens all the time. Do I feel more secure coding a piece of paper that triggers my memory to know what my dad's favorite song is? Or do I trust it writing it down or putting it in the cloud or in the computer somewhere? I don't, right? Just bottom line, I just don't. And, you know, Veda, who's one of our business partners, uses these password managers all the time. He puts his financials in there because he trusts it. I don't. Okay. And like I said, LastPass was was hacked a couple weeks after we had the discussion. Here are the ones that we like if you're going to use them. If you notice, LastPass has been scratched out. So if you're using LastPass, I would say stop it. 1Password seems to be pretty effective. Okay, there's no free version. It's $36 a year or $60 for a family. If you're going to share passwords, it's probably best to do a family one. That way, different people can have access to certain ones. When we do our emergency or digital prep class, we talk about how much information is in the cloud and on our phones, and that people need to have access to that in case we become incapacitated. Okay, so it's a great solution for that we can share certain passwords with certain people. Okay, Bitwarden is another one. And then for your tier 3s, you can store them in your browser or Apple Keychain. Apple Keychain is very secure. But again, I don't store my tier 1 passwords and accounts there. I'm just again ultra conservative with that.
Are you referring to like Google passwords?
Yes. So when I say save the tier 3s in your passwords, yes, you can save in your Google Password Manager. Yes. Again, those don't really have any information about us, and there's nothing to lose other than just identification. Yes.
So I'm using 1Password.
Okay.
And I'll make a password for me.
Yes. Yep.
So, how do you feel about that?
So the question is, he's using 1Password. They come up with passwords that are long and complicated, and like the ones we talked about before, a bunch of gibberish. Generally speaking, I think it's okay, so long as you always have 1Password access. Right? I mean, there's always a caveat, right? Because if you lose your 1Password access, you've lost everything. All your passwords. So that master password that you have to put somewhere, again, you have to write it down somewhere. I suggest that you don't write it down on your computer, right? And that you write it down on a piece of paper somewhere, but don't lose that piece of paper, because if you don't have that master password, everything's gone. Right. Again, I go back to tier 1s. I don't trust anybody with my tier 1s, period. For all the tier 2, tier 3s, if you want to throw the gibberish in, that's okay. You'll go through the next few slides where we tell you how to change your passwords. Another question, follow-up question. Yes.
For most of these websites that allow you to get around and not remember your password. So you forgot.
Yes.
How would you want to do that?
Yeah, there's way. So the question is, most of them allow you to reset your password. Yes, so long as they have a way to identify you, which we'll talk about multi-factor or 2-tier authentication. Okay. So yes, password manager is probably good for 99% of your passwords. You can let it choose it yourself, so long as you keep your master password somewhere safe, maybe in a safe. And again, I just reiterate, I personally don't put my financials anywhere else that's digitally. But okay. So this is what we were talking about, changing your password. So we forget our passwords, it doesn't work, something happens. Let's talk about this for a second. And we just talked about changing passwords on a regular basis. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology, it's a government agency, it's part of the US Department of Commerce. They're the ones who set the standards for a lot of this stuff. They say, and we agree, that the length of a password is more important than the gibberish password. That's what that says to translate. Okay. They also suggest that we don't change passwords at an arbitrary time and just an arbitrary time. So let me expand on that. So when I worked at Intel, we had to change our passwords every 6 months. A lot of you have worked in the corporate office, maybe you had passwords, and they say change it. So I go, okay, Samuel123, what Samuel123 exclamation point. Time to change it. Samuel123 ampersand or at sign. Guess what? That's the next key character on my keyboard. Oh, time to change again. Samuel123 pound sign. So that's kind of silly because it doesn't help, right? They also suggest that if you have a nice, long, strong password, and there's been no kind of compromise, don't worry about it. Okay. In this article, they also say that periodic password changes have little or no positive effect on your cybersecurity. Yes.
Talking about
Length of
how many
password.
characters.
I would suggest at least 16, but more than that if you could. But this goes back to our problem that not all passwords and websites allow a lot of characters. It's the hard part. Yes. They typically go 8 to 32. If you can do it. So I've run out of characters in some of my passwords. So you just pick another one. All right. We'll focus on when to change your passwords here for just a second. So you can, if you read the news a lot, you can always go and figure out who's been hacked. All right. So when do you change your password? When you think it's been shared or stolen or compromised. That also may include when one of your friends or your email's been hacked or stolen. Okay. If the service requires you to change password, obviously you have to. And if we forget our password, we obviously have to. I'm going to pause for 1 second, right? I'm going to pull this back up here. So there's a site called by Firefox. If you don't know what Firefox is, it's a browser. I know a lot of you guys have it, but if you don't know who owns it, it's owned by a nonprofit. Okay. And there's something called monitor.firefox.com. Okay. It's the word MONITOR period firefox.com. And so I can go to this place and I can enter my email address and I'll enter one of my old email addresses. Okay. And it'll tell me where those breaches have been found for that email address. Okay. So, you know, this again, this is my, just so you guys know, this is my very first email and I've kept it just for stuff like this. All right. And so you can go in and you can say, oh, these places were hacked and they have my account information, whatever it was. So of course we know Evite. I know they have some stuff, but nothing really important. They have my email address. They might have my physical address, but that's about it. Some of these other ones, I have no idea who they are. Right. And I just don't know. But it'll tell you kind of like, okay, Kobe, it was in 2020. It's got my email address, it's got job titles, names, phone numbers, physical address, social media profiles. Okay. I'm going to digress for just a second. When people get this stuff, when hackers get this information, you're going to see more of an onslaught of spam messages. That's why it's important to go back and watch that video from last month. All right. About what's a real email, what's a fake email. But again, you can always go back here and check monitor.firefox.com and see where the breaches are. This one looks Luxottica. Again, I have no idea what it is. A year ago, that wasn't there. It's now May 19th, 2023, which is relatively recent. Okay. Which is interesting, like I said, because I don't use this email address, but it's got some stuff on me. Okay. So monitor.firefox.com if you feel like you want to check and see who's breached your email address. Yes, sir.
I have noticed over a year ago, Google, giving me all this stuff, which I have confidence in that they have any problem. I believe that's big. There's much more like this because yeah, stuff. And, any comments on that?
So the question is Google and all the kind of new stuff they're doing. The last one you probably saw was enhanced browsing, right? And enhanced security. So here's the thing about big companies like that. They're in wide part or big competition with Apple. And so if Apple does one thing, Google tries to do the same thing. If Microsoft does something, Google and Apple try to do it. Generally speaking, I do like the safety standards that they have at Google. And I would take their recommendations under advisement, right? In other words, I would look at it, see if it fits our needs without breaking anything and employ it. So most of the time when people use Chrome, for example, and it says, we've enhanced your security, go to settings and turn it on, I suggest people do that. And the reason why is because what they're doing is they're filtering out bad websites. So yes, generally speaking, Google does a good job.
So same thing where you're going from. Yeah.
You go into settings, security and privacy, and then you go and you turn on enhanced browsing or enhanced security or something like that. Okay. So when it's time to change a password, always look for the forget password sign, right? Hopefully when you've registered with your account, you've put in another email or your email, or you've put in your cell phone number or a friend's cell phone number, okay? Something that you can reach all the time, okay? Click on forget password, and then it'll most likely give you a verification code. If you have one of those things, you turn on your you put in the verification code, and then you can come up with a new password. Now, we already talked about how to create passwords. Great opportunity when you have to change your password, or if you want to change passwords to do this, come up with passwords and be prepared before you start changing your password. In other words, I'm going to change my Facebook password before I go through the whole process. I'm going to say Facebook, and I'm going to say, I don't like ice cream, or I like ice cream, or I love ice cream, whatever, right? You may want to change your security questions as well if you can, okay, if they ask for them. We talk about publicly known information. Again, I can probably go into any one of your profiles and look you guys up on the web and find out what your maiden name was for those who got married, okay? I may not be able to find your favorite first car. That's always a good one. But I bet you I can find your first high school or college. So go ahead and make those as obscure as possible. You go through it, you get your two-factor authentication code, you enter it in, you change your password, you're good to go. Okay. While you're in the security and privacy settings of any account, go in there and make sure you put in an alternative phone number or your cell phone number or an alternative email account. If you don't have an alternative email, go create one from Google or Gmail. They're free, they're easy. Don't use it for anything other than maybe a recovery. By the way, I don't add my home address and I don't add my profile picture. The less people know about me, the better. Yes. You change your password, not your username. If you can, so let me go ahead, finish your question. I'll answer your question. Sorry. Yes. Yes. One more. Yes, old password. Just have your old password if you know it. How is it useful? So the question is, there's on this site it says have your old password if available. There are some sites like Google, sometimes Amazon. They say forget your password, and they say, what's the last password you remember? Okay. Nancy, you had a question?
Two things. First of all, when they say you're coming up with a new password, they say, you've used that the last 5 times, so you have to scratch your head again. But what I was referring to was I find it annoying where the second level verification requires another physical device. So I typically just have it sent to my email because I'm usually on my laptop when I'm doing stuff like that, versus when they only give me the choice that I got to go find my phone and look for the text, or sometimes I'll just have them call me. But at any rate, it's just a convenience thing.
So Nancy's complaining that you need to have another device, right, Nancy? Right? I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I've got all the devices, but they're not always there when
Yeah,
the one I need.
you know, I understand. But like I like to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so if I'm not gonna go nice on people, if you have to get up and get your cell phone because it keeps us safe, then it's probably worth it, right? So sorry, Nancy, I have no easy way for it. But again, if you're at your computer and you have another email address that you use as your recovery, you don't have to get up. You just log into your other email address and you get the code. So
Well,
like I said,
lots of
come up with a
times,
fake email, right? Come up with just another garbage email that is used just for recovery.
yeah. I typically, most of the time, it'll just let you come to your regular email.
A lot of
Depends
times.
upon, like,
So I want to talk about two-factor authentication for a minute though, because not everybody's the same, right? Most big companies don't have a place for you to call, and even if you call, they won't help you. Google doesn't call, or at least I think they do now. For a long time, they didn't allow for a call to go to your landline. So
okay,
if you didn't get a
yeah,
text, you were in trouble. I think they do
right,
now. I think they do now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
some people only allow a text to your phone. Says there's no standard. So if you have a cell phone, always make sure it's put in. Okay. So that's where we do. When it says verify your phone number, or if somebody asks to verify your phone number, you should always start with your cell phone if you can. Right. And then if you have one, and use that. And again, if you don't have one, have somebody that you trust that has a phone that will answer and
You
help you
gotta
with it.
track them down to get on.
Yeah, and then you have to track them down, right? No, that's true. But I mean, I can tell you that there are people.
It's a balance.
Yeah, it is a balance, right? But there are people, like I have clients that my cell phone number is their backup.
Oh, listen, aren't you nice?
Well, yeah. All right, so it verifies, blah, blah, blah. All right, so I don't want to go through this because you guys all get this. All right, so again, two-factor authentication. Think of it as two parties verifying each other, right? So I request something, they can request something back of me, and then it verifies that it's who I am, right? That's all it is. Again, most of it is if they have the ability to text you, they will. It's often the most easy way to get it because it's usually the fastest. Because I don't like waiting on a website for an email to come in, but text goes really quickly. So again, reemphasize, if you have a cell phone, make sure the website or your account has your cell phone in it that they can text you if you have it. We gotta hide this again because it's covering those captions. Okay. Just real quick how it works. Put your username in, it texts you, you get a text on your phone, you enter the code. It's really that simple. And again, I know a lot of people don't like doing this, but again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, a word on this. If you get a code from a verification code and then you read it, it says, never ever give this code. We will never call you. If anybody calls you for that number, hang up on them. Don't have to be polite, just hang up on them. Okay, because they're a bad person. They will, nobody who sends you in, because there's no human interaction here. This is all system machine stuff that happens. Okay. This is another reason why in a different class, and we'll probably talk about Black Friday shopping and why we don't like Zelle. because Zelle follows some of this stuff, and then people will often call you for that code, and then they have access to your bank account. Okay. Don't ever give the two-factor authentication code to anybody. Don't keep them. They're only good for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. I see people write down in their password sheets all these two-factor authentication codes. It's like you don't need them, right? And it just makes it harder for them to figure out what their passwords are. Temporary, don't give them out. Okay, let me just go through here. We're almost done here. All right. So password summary. Create easy to remember passwords. Tier them based on importance. We like passphrases versus gibberish. Create a pattern. First letter capitalized, plus sign in between each word or whatever, or plus sign after the first two words, whatever you want to do, just so you know what it is. Maybe it's a connector before your number, right? Or maybe it's at the front, doesn't matter. Okay, just make sure you know what it is. Do not reuse tier 1 or tier 2 passwords. Plain end of story, full stop. Do not use publicly known personal information. We spend a lot of time on that, right? I can figure out your maiden name. I can figure out where you were born. I can figure out your children or grandchildren. Turn on multi-factor authentication. And if you want to use a password manager, go ahead. You can probably save your tier 2 and tier 3 passwords. Oh, sorry. Use a password manager program. You can save almost all your passwords in there. I choose not to do my financials. But everything else can, and it will automatically fill them in. If those tier 3 passwords, you can also save in your browser or your keychain. Okay. All right. So that was a lot of information. I just want to let's open up for questions and see what kind of comments or questions that you may have. Or I did such a fantastic job that nobody has questions.
You did a great job. It's not a question. It's just a reminder. I'm in the process of updating all my estate documents and stuff. And particularly when you get into the section of the incapacity, just be aware that somebody somewhere needs to know, first of all, how to access and get into any of your financials if they're your power of attorney for finances, and or any family members that are going to need to get into your digital information if something happens. So it's something we don't think about, and it makes life miserable for the poor persons trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and so if you didn't hear what Nancy said, she's kind of doing planning, future planning, and then there's a whole digital kind of area that we have to be aware of and take care of. Again, if you use a password manager, for those who are a power of attorney, you maybe give them some of your passwords through what they call a shared vault, right? Or a shared password section. We talk about this in our emergency and digital prep class. You might just put it on a flash drive who's somewhere far remote and just, mail it to them and say, and password protect your flash drive, or on the next visit, hand it to them. The only problem with that is that you have to keep it up to date.
Yeah.
You can put something, if you have a safety deposit box, you can always put something in there and that they have a key for it. But the most convenient is probably a password manager that you can share. Yes.
On that topic, I recently heard you dedicate a letter to contact, but I don't know what that is.
So Virginia asked about legacy contacts for the Apple environment. You're on an Apple, you're on an iPhone. So there is a section under, I believe it's Apple Health or System. I can't remember which one it is, where you can look, but if you just go to settings and search for legacy, what will happen is you can assign a legacy contact. Let me reset for a second. If you are an iPhone user, an iCloud user, we become incapacitated. Nobody, even Apple, will not have access to your iCloud information. Okay, that's just one of those things. If you guys remember, during the Trump years, I think they were trying to break into some iPhones and Apple said no. Right, that just goes against their standards, right? However, with the legacy contact, what happens is, again, you go to settings, you look for legacy contact, you add a legacy contact, that person that you designate will get an email with a special code. That special code is not available for use at any time that you are alive or still around, right? Or what they will need. So say I put Virginia as my legacy contact. She'll get an email with a number on it. She would have to go to the Apple store, show them that code, and show them a death certificate. And then she will have access to my iCloud. Okay, but it's their way around having to make sure that people have access to that iCloud information. Okay, so it's pretty secure still. Any other questions? Yes. Android doesn't have the same thing, right? They do have a couple of things called like photos. They have a locker. In Google Drive, they don't have that encrypted. If you use OneDrive, there's a secure vault there that people need a passcode to. You would just have to give the password to your contact. Okay. So the thing with Android, it's all based on Gmail and your Google account. They just need to have your email available. And they'll probably need your phone and your PIN, right? So they can get the two-factor authentication. Okay. Any other questions? Was this helpful to you guys at all?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a fantastic weekend. Come back, you guys at the V, come back and see us in November. All right. Talk about doing all the shopping that you can do. And we're always open for presents, by the way, just so you know. So you guys can all do some safe online shopping. Okay. Thank you guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Eric. It was a great
All right.
session.
Thank you.